Welcome to a video where I will try to demonstrate my 4-joystick controller played in the game Fly Dangerous using custom dev options to allow for Newtonian thrust physics. And if you're not sure what I mean by Newtonian thrust physics, in the case of this game it just means that you will accelerate and then you will need to decelerate equally for every amount of acceleration. So if you thrust forward, then you'll continue forward. This will also apply to rotation. If you begin rotating to the left or to the right, you will continue to rotate to the left or to the right until you provide an input. So, in order to play the game, using these options, you do need to go to turn on your advanced options and then ensure that auto ship roll and auto ship rotation are off. So you can see auto ship roll, auto ship rotation. Down here, default flight assists, all off. See, the default flight assists are all off right there. Okay. Then you go to the dev options and you load from clipboard, which I've already done, but you can save them in a paste. Copy to clipboard right there in the middle, and then paste them into a notepad. And then what you can do is then just copy this to your clipboard by selecting it in Control Copy, and then you just click Load from Clipboard, and it'll load it. And the important things to change in order to enable full Newtonian thrust are just the max speed. If you just increase the max speed, and then you choose not to use any boost, but I also increase the max boost speed. Actually, you can use boost if you want to. I do not. And you just increase the max speed to maximum, and so until you go 99999 meters per second, there won't be any velocity roll off. And no drag, no angular drag. And then on my settings, I also increased the thrust a little bit to 1.2, and I equalized the lateral and vertical thrust to be the same. The standard settings, they're not equal. There's more vertical thrust than horizontal. It's just an aspect of the classic joystick flight model that people are used to, where you kind of use pitch and roll even in a space game, and then you hit apply. But you're going to need to do that every time you go into the level. So then to play the level, another thing about this game is the levels are kind of tuned for the flight model in the default settings. So you can fly them with the full Newtonian, but I find them to be not as fun. So then you take, and I have a bunch of custom levels here that I've made in Unity, and then I actually typed or pasted all these numbers in to make my own custom levels. And then all you do is you select them and you copy it, and then here you go to the single player, and then you can load a custom, and then you just paste the world data into there. You can see the title, Assault on Spin Station. If you're a fan of The Expanse, then you should know what the Assault on the Spin Station was. And then, as I said, you gotta go back in here and then make sure every time you start to hit apply again on the custom. So the Assault on the Spin Station is based on the attack, but Actually, in the show, the vehicle, the Rocinante, it's approaching from the start of the scene at full velocity. It slows down only one time, engages at low velocity with the other opposing ship, and then actually comes to a relative stop, hiding behind the space station. So, as you can guess, I'm going to be flying acrobatically through gates. It's not going to make sense that I can perform the same accelerations. Instead, there are things that happen during the trajectory, and you can consider my course as a sort of dance, a race course dance, inspired by the moments of the attack on Spin Station. So the trajectory and the velocities are not going to compare, but the course elements may remind you of events that occurred during this attack. Okie dokie. And then, real quick walkthrough of my controls. So here you can see on the bottom right is the bottom of the controller. Those are my fingers. And then on the bottom left is the top of the controller. And on the top left thumb, this is what you're going to use to accelerate up and down. Let me get a little closer to the ring over here, and then you can see my acceleration a little better. So that was forward, obviously, but if I go up, let me get to a stop here. If I go up, you can see that I'm going up, and then on the left, bottom left of the screen, you see my thumb. If I go down, then I go down, and if I go left, I'll thrust and accelerate to the left. But unless I thrust, now I'm just going to keep going. So now I'm moving in that direction. And then on the bottom of the controller is my reverse and my forward. So reverse and forward. And then on the right side of the controller, just incidentally, that's where I have all of my rotation. So you can rotate in the yaw to the left and the yaw to the right. And again, it's just going to keep going if you don't put an input. And then you can pitch down, rotate it up. And you may notice that I do not have my up and down inverted. It's just something that I got used to. You know, you be playing Halo games and stuff. And actually in Flight of Nova during atmospheric flight, my controls are inverted. And then there's always this weird time when the controls switch over to space, non-atmospheric flight. And then up is up instead of down is up, and I always have a little moment of having to switch right there. I like practicing the switch. And then of course on the bottom of the controller is where I have my roll. And in the game Fly Dangerous, you can see the controls are very agile. That's one of the things that you can change, and are pretty close to default. But the game is supposed to be, let me see if I have a camera control here, simulating this extremely agile spacecraft. Sport performance racing. Alright, so then I'm just going to fly through these hoops, and I'm going to miss a little bit here, so I'm not paying attention. I'm talking to you, but that's okay. Actually, this course is kind of challenging. Another problem is I'm staring at the wrong screen here. So, the course actually has a really hard section right at the very end, and you fly straight down a line, and I mean, I can do it every time as it were, but I have to pay attention, and I'll be talking. So these first couple of rings, as far as the dents, and remind of the Assault, that's when the Rocinante is pretending to be space junk, so it's kind of tumbling around. Then they're getting too close, it'll be obvious, the opponents will be able to detect what's going on, so they go rocketing, they fire up their engines and they go rocketing forward. So here I'm trying to slow down in time. So actually the Rocinante does not slow down at this point, but you have to do it to fly through the left gates. And here's where they use their point defense cannons to take out the torpedoes that have been fired at the freighter that's actually carrying an assault team that's going to board the station. torpedo they engage with the point defense cannons. Then shortly after that, the ship actually engages another torpedo. And then here I have these 5-point combinations to represent taking out these torpedoes. So you'll notice that you have to get to quite a low velocity to maneuver through these gate combinations, but I find that it's actually very engaging to have that combination of accelerating to cover distance and then decelerating for complex maneuvers. A lot of people will argue that the entire course should be at a relatively constant velocity, and therefore the turns, as it were, the curvature of the trajectory when you're turning should be kind of consistent as well, so very long sweeping corners so that you can be at a very high velocity even with thrust limitations and then perform at basically maximum thrust and maximum velocity a very long, slow turn. Having been playing, with this controller for a while, I kind of really think that moving very slowly through very close series of obstacles is just really fun. I just feel like I really like it. And I just think that it's a good kind of course element for 6-axis thrust racing. And maybe 2-axis thrust racing, like only rocketing out the back. Maybe that will kind of go differently, or maybe these kind of course elements, well, let me scratch my eye real quick, work well with that as well. I don't know. So let me get ready here. I'm talking, so I'm not flying, but let me just let the ship drift for a second. My eyes itching me because I'm talking and I'm on camera. Anyways, so I just was talking about how I feel like these little short distance course elements are actually quite good. So I also agree that long swooping course elements are good, and I have other courses where, so there's no way I'm going to make this. I'm just going to slide this down. There's just no way I'm going to make it through all these gates. Velocity. Talking, I'm not paying attention. I don't even know. I can't tell which way I'm going exactly. Once you start getting down to the high resolution, I just can't tell. When it's not so far away, and then I can tell, but when it's such a tiny dot in the distance, and that's all I got. A lot of games that have a little cursor that gives you your exact vector. And that would probably help a lot in this little run, 5 loops, but it does provide a challenge to face them without it. So one of the objectives of these videos where I'm showing my controller is that I'm hoping that the viewer of the video can watch the sticks and see the stick inputs result in ship motion. So I'm not trying to sell the controller and that I'm going to manufacture them and sell them, but I am trying to demonstrate that the controller is actually, it's very easy to use. I'm not a video gamer. And one of the conversations that I've been having a lot recently with these game athletes, as you might call them, is that they say, no, I'm so much better than you, you don't know shit. Excuse my language, but it's a common conversation, but it has to be said that I feel that a lot of people who don't have any experience with full thrust newtonian would have one bad day trying to do it maybe on a keyboard, and then they would say, man, that sure is hard. But I have to say that I don't play any video games, really not a gamer. I never really had much proficiency with video games. I'm never a winner. I did learn to fly drones, but there's not as many controls in drones. A lot of people find it to be quite easy. I had proficiency with 6 degrees of freedom at, of course, low velocity, humble velocity, right away, instantly, first day, first try, with this controller. I didn't have that experience with all the other control input methods, but the way that I have the controller organized, where the thumbs each do have both axes are active, but if you have noticed, on the bottom sticks, I only go down and up on one and left and right on the other. So if I go down and a little bit over, nothing happens. So there's no punishment. So it's okay if I'm a little sloppy. So for a long time, I can just kind of get used to pulling the stick in one direction. So it's really no different than using a regular trigger on a game controller, except that it's a joystick. But because you're only using one axis of the joystick, the mental capacity that it takes to interact with the two axes is only marginally different than a regular trigger. So if you have any basic proficiency with a gamepad, you should find that it's actually already very intuitive to use the controller in this configuration with only one axis on each stick. I have started to use on one stick all 4 axes, and it's a little clumsy at first, but you really could start right off with only one extra joystick and probably be alright, but I think you wouldn't have quite as easy of a time with it. And if you kind of wait until you are getting coordinated with one axis, I think I feel that the transition to driving maybe 8 axes simultaneously will be a lot easier if you go from 6 by splitting. And there is occasion, even in a simple game like this, to drive 8. So you could put all of the ship controls on one, and then you could put, I don't know what's going on, I think I'm missing really bad. I gotta slow down again. I don't want to, you kind of want to try to support the form, but I just can't do it. So, I can make it, but I actually miss sometimes even when I'm not talking. So, it's kind of hard to fly down this line. I don't know if that's just because I can't see, so I don't know which direction is straight. I kind of feel like that's what's going on here. It's so dark that I can't tell where my rear engine is pointing exactly. I can't tell where my exact front is. And then because I'm playing full Newtonian, it actually drifts a little bit. It's tiny, but it's such a magnification. That tiny bit of drift results in a little bit of drift in my vector. And since I'm already kind of a little struggling to figure out exactly where my vector is going, I kind of struggle with that. Alright, so that's 2 laps around the course, and I'm going to call the video right there. But hopefully you were able to kind of see the controls, and then the ship respond. And if you want to try this controller out, you can actually build one yourself. Just go to tsmspace.com. That's tsmspace.com. And there are instructions on how to build one. And some suggestions on where to buy the parts. If you don't think that you can build one of these yourself, well, you can go there and you can make an account on Hackaday.io, which is a do-it-yourself page, and you can talk about that. And then maybe I can use that as some kind of way to convince maybe somebody to take it up. Maybe Xbox could make one or something like that. Is it aiming a little too high? I think that Xbox should throw a couple extra joysticks on there instead of triggers, or maybe in addition to the triggers. I don't think so. I think it's not crazy. I actually think that a game like this, just a simple racing game, would be in everyone's repertoire right away. And I just think it's really fun, and I just don't think it's as hard as people think it is. It's just a matter of having an intuitive interface. I also don't think this is the only intuitive interface for space games. There are some others. There's actually several other options out there that people like. including the slightly more challenging but perfectly acceptable keyboard and mouse once they get their head wrapped around using 8 buttons with the one hand. But I do think that, game controllers have proven themselves to be desirable and easy to use, and I just think that people would like them. Alright, thank you very much.